Hello?
Let's see. Can folks in the back hear me? Will you put your hand up? Cool, cool, cool. We understand there's a line going around the corner, so we were kind of waiting for just to get a little more people in here. But is anyone going to see Beyonce? Because we want you to get there on time. So we're gonna go ahead and start. I think there are still some seats that are kind of scattered throughout here for some of the folks in the back, or if there are some folks that need to be seated and can't stand. I know that we're scrambling for chairs. I have to say, at around 5:15, I was like, is anybody coming? So I'm thrilled. I hate that y'all are standing, but I'm thrilled to see all of this support come in today. Welcome, everybody, to the first of many meetings regarding the City Park Master Plan. It has been thrilling to launch this. So about 4 weeks ago, we actually began to create that input loop, right, from our users and from the community. So who here has taken the survey? All right. Who here hasn't? All right. We need to hear from you. We've had about 4,000 responses. We actually have Paloma Garcia, who's going to give all the cool numbers. I'm going to try to not steal her thunder, but I'm super excited. 4,100. I've been involved in cultural planning for most of my career, and I have actually never seen that amount of response in just a short amount of time. And I think it really speaks to the power of City Park, right? City Park is very personal to people. It is sacred ground. There is an area on the survey that says, like, hey, what did we miss in here? What do you kind of just want to tell us? And the last version of that I read had about 650 comments with some very clear themes running through it. But who here wrote nature, 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 nature? You're my person, all right. Yeah, I would say if we did a word cloud on all those responses, that would be the great big word in the middle. And we very much know we know that City Park is your respite from this crazy urban environment, right? We know that you don't want to be told how to use every single space. Like, here's where your playground is, and here's where you do that, and here's where you do that. You just want to walk. You want to walk with your dog. You want to walk with your buddy. You want to feel like you've escaped the city. And in 1,300 acres, you can really do that. So I want to start by committing to you that this is not a development plan. This is not a commercialization of City Park. We are not here to create Disney. We are here to find that essence. Like, what makes City Park special? Why is City Park in the very middle of New Orleans? Like, what are those things? We are, this design team, we're not coming here with any hardline truths, because I think we know we have a lot to learn from you. We don't know what is sacrosanct, right? So again, tonight, you know, I want to kind of say what's ahead of us. Who here is disc golf? Who's here? I knew y'all be here. All right. I know I got some tennis folks in the house, some passionate tennis people. All right. Rugby surely has to be here somewhere. All right, I know. All right. This is not a referendum on any of those. This is really to begin to set a stage. So Michael Van Valkenburgh Associates, part of this team, we only signed the contract July 1. And we've had to do so much data gathering and research, and just to kind of make that baseline, right, so that we know where we're making decisions from. So we've really just been in the nerdy part. We haven't been secretly making drawings. You all may have, I don't know. But I don't think so. That hasn't been going on yet. And again, just 1 month ago, we said, come on, start to talk to us. So really, we're just beginning to hear themes. tonight is a little bit about saying what's coming. And I know that you all came tonight, and I really wish I was like funny or something, so you'd come back every single time, no matter what, just because I was funny. But I hope you come back no matter what, because it's City Park. Because each time we come in front of you, things begin to kind of crystallize more and more, because we're creating this constant loop back and forth. So don't just come tonight, please don't. For your friends and family who weren't able to make it tonight, this is being videoed. And it will always be on the master plan website page at City Park. So we're going to do a lot of talking to you about how something's done, but we are at the end going to take questions. And right now, I think there are comment cards. I can't actually see any because the room is full. Okay. Actively write down questions during this. And I know that who is taking, can you give me a little bit of guidance on, do they just hold it up in the air and somebody will come and get them? We are taking them together, and I'll tell you why. It's not because we're sorting out any weird ones that we don't want to answer, and I'll get to that. It's because we don't want 5 questions on the exact same topic, right? We really want to make sure, we kind of get a breadth of things. So we'll be actually taking live questions at the end. Also, at the end of this, everybody with a bright green name badge is part of the design team. So I think we have about over 50 people. I don't know if they're all here, but it is a huge team. We're all going to be mingling. Just come ask us questions, right? Just come right up to us and ask questions. We're going to be there for about 30 minutes afterwards. And then every single question that we didn't answer, every one of them, we are going to write a written response to and have on our website. And that will be like this really evergreen tool. Like everything that we're taking in, we're always going to be updating that. If you think you saw your question, but it doesn't exactly look like your question, that is just because if 4 questions kind of look the same, we bundled them. We are not editing questions. We are here to be as transparent as possible, to give you as much information as possible, and to take in as much information as possible. And with that, I would like to debunk some things about City Park. Up, down. Okay, I'm not going to read those, but hopefully it kind of gives you an idea. We're a juggernaut, 330 employees, $25 million. We're huge. But here's what we are not. We are not part of the city of New Orleans. We are not municipal employees that get an annual appropriation. City Park is actually a 130-year-old state agency that also doesn't get an annual appropriation from the state either. We make our own money here largely. For those of you who voted for the millage, thank you. That was game-changing for us to begin to get kind of diversify our revenue sources. So we are not, this is not like people can yell at you, where my tax dollars go, right? It's not quite like that here. For those of you who are kind of park nerds and know Olmsted, who designed Central Park, we are not an Olmsted park. I know that people let us say that. And by the way, in the world of parks, it's like 6 degrees of separation. Every single park on earth will find a way to say that they're an Olmsted park. It's like maybe Olmsted breed on our plans or shook hands of somebody, but no, we are not. And nor are we the biggest park in the nation or the second biggest park in the nation. This is another game, though, that parkies play. They'll be like, well, I have the acreage of all that water body, or I have air rights, right? I mean, we will really outdo one another. We are really big, though. And we're really unique in that we're this big, so we're 3 miles by 1 mile in the very center of a city. And I always say, City Park is the living room of New Orleans, right? For a little bit of context, we are bigger than Gretna. We are bigger than Harahan. We are bigger than Uptown and the French Quarter combined, but we have no tax base. Up until a year ago, I was a state employee, and all 330 employees were state employees. But again, we didn't receive any annual appropriation. We couldn't invest any of our funds. And importantly, we couldn't fundraise. So when you think about all these other great parks in the nation, Central Park, Millennium Park in Chicago, Balboa, Forest Park in St. Louis. They had a tool that we didn't have. They could fundraise. So we kind of did a fancy thing, right? We moved to a public-private partnership, largely called this Conservancy model, right? This kind of a parky nerd term, but it is a public-private partnership. The state agency, CPI, still exists. It still has a board. Our board chair, David Waller, I think I see you over there, is in the audience here tonight. But then we actually created a 501c3 nonprofit, City Park Conservancy, to go along with it. And our wonderful Friends of City Park group, the membership program that also had a nonprofit, merged in with us, and we made one city park. We did all of that to lay the foundation for something very important. The master plan. We could not possibly go do something bold and visionary without having philanthropy be a part of it. So I know for a lot of you, it almost seems like we just got done redoing the park after Katrina, because that's so recent for so many of us. But it's been some time. Also, kind of the focus of that plan at the time was really on the south side of the park. So you see the Great Lawn and all these improvements. It never really looked at the north side of the park, not comprehensively. And that's almost 2/3 of the park up there. We know we say yes to things and we say no to things, but we don't really know why, because we just don't have that final plan. And we have a lot of competing needs. Park users want different things. So it's really time to say, let's all talk, right? And let's also think about what the park can do for us in the future. So we knew we needed an iconic design team for an iconic park. We literally did an international search, and we were just overwhelmed at the respondents. Best in class. But we chose the very best in class right here. We needed to make sure that we had a firm that understood large parks. Large parks are so different than neighborhood parks or convention center parks, right? We have land management. We manage forestry stands nearly. It's completely different. We needed someone with a lot of expertise in stormwater, right? It's already a thing now, and it's only going to be more so in the future. We also needed someone that had range. I'm kind of stealing from Randy Odenay, who's our vice president overseeing the master plan, but we were walking one day, he's like, Kara, how do you find someone who can deal with like the old oaks and like this beautiful kind of WPA, and he's like, and swan boats. I'm like, I don't know, good point, right? Who has that kind of range, who can be fun but elegant and kind of do everything that we ask of City Park. And we wanted to be wowed. Like, we haven't come this far to not maybe have something truly breathtaking and exciting happen here in New Orleans. I know that you all have been here before. How many of you have actually been to public input meetings for City Park? I want you to know tonight, I have read every single thing, every comment that was done as part of Wisner. I read every comment that came in as part of the citywide, the park-wide plan, the citywide parks plan that the city of New Orleans is doing right now. That is not lost. And those values that, especially with Wisner, that were put forward, like, please give us passive space, right? Please don't, you don't have to make everything kind of a widget in this kind of transactional park moment. You got it, and we share those values. And I want to start by saying that is not lost. That is going all into this process. And Paloma Garcia will speak to that a little bit in a minute. This is different, though, because it's bigger. City Park often looked at small project areas independently without looking at the whole thing collectively, to really see how the entire system works together. Maybe it's not just Wisner, where we're really looking for those kind of ecosystem services and where we're looking for those moments to interact with nature. So we hope that you will hang with us and know that all of that is going into this process. I kind of covered it. I think I covered all of this. What happens at the end of the meeting. But again, I do hope that you'll be thinking about questions throughout. Hold it up. We'll be gathering it. And with that, it is my pleasure to introduce the design team. And I think once the screen goes orange, it goes to you all. Okay. All right, thanks, everybody.
Hello? I think this... Hello. Thank you for having us here. We're very excited about City Park and what it means for New Orleans. We've been super excited already about the comments we've heard, and we're looking forward to having many more conversations. My name is Paul Seck. I'm the project director for Michael Van Valkenburgh Associates, MVVA. We are a landscape architecture and planning firm of over 100 professionals. We have 3 offices, and we do a lot of work throughout North America. Joined by Michael Van Valkenburgh, founder and creative director, who's going to speak next. Gulliver Shepard, who's leading the planning efforts for the project. Paloma Garcia, who somehow is not sitting on stage, but will talk in a moment also and is leading our public process. Michalis Parokas, who's the project manager and leading the market study. And we also have other MVVAers, Nadia and Kate, who are floating around here. When we came to City Park the first time, we realized there was a lot going on, a lot of great and a lot of things that felt like they could be better or slightly confusing. And so we went and we made a design team that could cover all these experts. We have Limnotech, who is our hydrologist, who's going to be looking at the lagoon system. Stantec, who is our local experts on stormwater, resiliency, and transportation. AEI, who will be our ecologist. The Hawthorne Agency, who's here with 718 Creative, who will be helping with our public outreach. Open, a graphic designer doing wayfinding. Activitas, who's our rec specialist and is here for questions for folks after. ETM, which will be doing our maintenance and operations. Attractions management, which will be looking at the amusement park. HRNA, who's also here and could answer some questions after if people are interested, will be leading our market analysis. Suzanne Turner is our historian, and Dharma Consulting is our consulting cost estimator. So as you can see, we've put together a big team for a big project and for this next 18 months of doing master planning. We've had the luck and great moments of working on many large master plans throughout the United States. Each of them has some significance to City Park, but each master plan is unique. So we're looking at City Park as a complete, unique opportunity. In Brooklyn Bridge Park, we did a 2-year master plan where we looked at balancing maintenance and operations with revenue, balancing program that was needed in Brooklyn that didn't exist elsewhere. But mainly it was a place for people, connected people back to the waterfront, and created a safe space for evenings, which we think are all great things that we're going to be looking at in City Park. Portland's flood protection project, which is in Toronto, we redirected the mouth of a river. We worked on a master plan for years of this. All of our master plans are a process of getting the actual project executed. This created redundant resiliency for stormwater and flood surges, and then created a new neighborhood for Toronto. It's currently under construction, completed by 2025, and also with the resiliency component of it creates a major ecological initiative that will connect the lake back up into Toronto. And the last master plan I wanted to share with you is City Arch River, which is a St. Louis Arch, the greatest monument in the United States, and was severely disconnected over time by highways, by city movements that were done poorly, and no connection to the Mississippi River. So through, and this was something Gulliver worked on quite a bit, through writing a grant, there was money appropriated for capping over the highway and making those circulation connections back into the city, clearer for the arch, and people able to enjoy the Mississippi River. And through that process, with the National Park Service looking at some of their assets that maybe could have been done differently and really allow people to have a much more experiential moment on the arch grounds, and through the arch. So each one of our projects and master plans are very important, and Michael's going to now talk about why we do a master plan and how important it is to cities.
This time of day, it's a lot for me to hold something in both of my hands, so bear with me. I want to reiterate what Paul was saying, that we're super excited to be working on this project with you. New Orleans is just an extraordinary city. I think it captures the imagination of everybody in America, and it's a city that is beloved. And in the process, you know, we've been talking about how do we take City Park, which is so beloved and so great already, and make it even better. And it's just sort of, to me, inevitable that New Orleans deserves it. New Orleans will demand it, and we look forward to doing that with you. Guess we're going in the other direction. Parks are, of course, unique places in the world, but they're particularly important in cities. They're an unprogrammed place that sort of does two things that are quite different. One is that they're places for active recreation, and that's a kind of thing that most of us have done at some point in our lives. But the other thing is just that unique opportunity to feel connected to nature and all the things that nature gives us experientially, that makes us understand who we are and value our lives. So one of the things about a landscape is that it's different every day. It changes every day. And not a little, changes a lot. So a park is, whether we meant it to be that way or not, always moving forward, always changing. Little trees become big trees, become old trees, and then those come down and new trees come up, and everything else operates that way. And so if you don't do a master plan, nature doesn't wait for you. Nature doesn't collaborate with humans. We desperately attempt to collaborate with nature, and it's a very unwilling partner. It's like, yeah, go ahead, humans. It's not like that. It doesn't work that way. Nature has its own forces, and so an extremely important part of what's happening in this project is to understand its natural systems and to make those sympathetic with what we learn from you in what you're learning for. A little heads up on what Paloma's going to tell you, but one of the things we're learning in epic amounts through the questionnaire process is how much all of you put value on improving the nature that's already here. And we love that. That's something we just love to do. The other thing, of course, in addition to the fact that that landscapes grow, is that cities evolve in their different places over different times. And in short amounts of time, actually, like a city can be a very different place 10 years into the future from where it is now. And so part of the master plan is getting in step with things that people are inspiring to. You know, I'm like that guy that every time I get in a cab, or you know, I'm in a restaurant and somebody said, "Why are you in New Orleans?" I say, "Working on a plan for City Park," and I get like a little moment of their time about what they love. And I'll tell you, the one thing that is universal is how important this park is to everybody that we talk to. And we've been coming down here, starting looking at this project in the beginning of this year, which is, you know, getting close to a year ago. And it's just an amazing sense of affirmation about what this place means to your city. You know, as people, we love history. History's so important to understand where we've come from. I mean that in a general way. I actually was a history major in college briefly before a professor stood up and mentioned design with nature, and I'm like, oh, it might be better than being a history professor, and I changed courses. But we love to understand what people were trying to do in the past. That's why we look at history. What were they aspiring to do? What about that do we build on, and what about that do we reject and change? And then the present, of course, means the way the past works now. And then the master plan is all about imagining the future. This master plan is for people who haven't been born yet, as much as everybody in this room. It will take, 15 or 20 years to build the park that we imagine. And, we're talking about kids that aren't born that will be entering college by the time the ideas of the master plan. I just find that, especially, no big secret here. I'm passing third base in life, I'm like, headed towards, the home plate, which is not a good place to be in the game of life. But I love being involved in thinking about passing on what places like this are for the future. We know that there have been things in the past that are missing, that are good and bad in in City Park. And those are things that we're going to look at. I don't believe, by the way, we're bringing back the swimming pool, in case you wonder, what's going on with this image. But it was a way of coming together that we're looking for the equivalent of in the master plan. And we all of us who live in cities have used parks forever. We all came to appreciate parks in a new way in the pandemic. And this will not be the last emergency in our lives. These will happen again. And even if we're not in a state of emergency, I don't know about you, but I have a fight with my wife about something, like a walk in the park basically does a whole lot to making it better. And I think everybody uses parks in ways like that. When we were preparing, we hadn't been selected yet. The thing that, we've worked on so many different parks around the country, but the importance of this park to high school and college students here in the city who don't have the facilities that more suburban high schools have, that just put such a smile on my face. My grandkids are teenagers, and that age is very dear to me. But I just love seeing those kids coming in here and training so hard. And you got to remember, in 10 years, those people in those photographs are very likely going to be starting families, in the city. That's how it works in a park. So this is very much about letting this park become a place that makes people want to stay in New Orleans and continue to live here and to imagine someday raising their own children here. We're not exactly sure how we'll do it, but we really want to stretch use into the night. Night's great here, especially in the hot months. But nights just are when people are off from work and they have more time, and it's definitely going to be a focus of the master plan. And, a park is like Thanksgiving, and I think for most of us, Thanksgiving is when we invite a lot of people to the house, even relatives that we kind of might wish we didn't have, but that's not how you deal with them. You kind of, you embrace them and you try to make Thanksgiving the time when you come together. And, but you don't have Thanksgiving and not have something for everybody. If your kids have gone off the rails and become vegan, or if you're vegan grandparents and your kids have gone off the rail and want to have strip steak, you kind of got to have everything that people want at Thanksgiving. I hope it's a happy analogy for how we're thinking about this park, that we have to expand the range of things so that we aren't just paying lip service to the idea that this is a place for everybody, but truly there are reasons that they want to come here and make this their own. So this is when we got the request for proposals to go after this in the park, and the first thing people in the office did was to look up on social media whether people in New Orleans like City Park. What do you think we found out? They like City Park a lot. So that was actually very fortifying and exciting to us, that we would get to understand those things that they love and build on them and think about transforming something that's as beloved as this into something that's so this is just a quick, these are images of some of our projects. There was an industrial warehouse on this site when we started 24 years ago. This is Brooklyn Bridge Park, and this is just pictures of people using mostly our projects and things that we are thinking about as we start to work with you on this project. That parks, they support urban life. It's just as simple and as broad as that. And parks create places for getting together, assembly. This is a portable, it's actually an inflatable, this might be an actual stage for the Met Opera, but we have in Brooklyn Bridge Park, we have an inflatable movie screen, goes up, start putting it up in the afternoon, they take it down after the movie's shown, it's gone the next day, but there's a whole summer of movies in the park, and sometimes thousands of people come out. And parks offer places for delight, and it's free. People have performances, and you can go there and see people doing stuff that you wouldn't normally, and it's pretty wonderful. And parks are so much about kids and their families and their caregivers, and play is one of the most important things that human beings do. Kids know how to do it. They're born knowing how to play. Adults kind of try to keep themselves familiar with what it means to play and have a good time, and that's an important part of what a park does us too. And we love the idea that the things that we can do here will welcome families. These are the grills in Brooklyn Bridge Park, and it's just such a wonderful moment where no matter who you are in the city, but particularly Brooklyn, you can get a grill on the edge of New York Harbor, which if you haven't been there is a pretty great spot, and we love that everybody has access to that. But I still think that one of the things that is most universal is we just come to parks to unwind, to loosen the tethers to our life and to wander around and be inspired by things that are around us. This is a city with an amazing history. And it's our intention to embrace that history and the work that we do with you. And then to build resilience. This is actually the first park that we ever worked on in Columbus, Indiana. And I wasn't selected yet, and I was standing with a bunch of competitors on the site, and sort of my ability to pay attention comes and goes. Though I have not micro-napped yet today, I hope everybody who I said might see me micro-napping on the stage, I've been able to avoid that. So the parks director is saying, yeah, we want to do this and we want to do that, and by the way, in May, the water will be about 3 feet above my head on this site. And I'm like, what did he just say? That entire site goes under that much water on an annual basis. So we're familiar, and I know you don't want that to happen here. We're not saying it should or will, but we are comfortable dealing with hydrology and water, and I don't want to be so corny as to say that this kind of water is your friend, but water is a reality in urban parks, and it's going to be a very big part of the master plan, and we want to harness that and make it an engine that helps make the park a success. And then connecting us with nature. And every time I show this slide, I say those are Paul's kids. And I think sometimes you tell me they're not your kids, and sometimes they are.
One of them.
One of them is. Okay, so that's the, you'd think I'd figure out the mistake and stop saying it. That is one of Paul's children there. A park is so much about the qualities that all humans across history like to do. That's what makes all parks similar to each other. They give us a place outside to do things that we all enjoy, no matter where we came from or where we are in the world. And that's kind of the common denominator, by the way, of what tonight's meeting is about. This is the beginning of us learning about your aspirations for this place, socializing and inviting new users, especially young people and teenagers. It's very important to make them feel welcomed and to have places of their own. This is in the Gathering Place in Tulsa, Oklahoma, and these extremely talented, acrobatic, crazy fit kids show up on these bikes, and it's pretty impressive to see. And we hope that what we do is an embodiment of the aspirations we learn about from you tonight and other nights. So I'm going to turn this over to Gulliver. That's him in the middle, but it's also him on the other end of the stage. So thanks, Gulliver.
Great. Yep. So Paul talked about the who, Michael talked about the why, and I'm going to talk about the how. So here we go. This is an amazingly large endeavor for all the reasons that everyone speaking before me has mentioned. And so the first critical part is how do we break it apart in some digestible pieces where we can think together on this? And we have proposed this layered approach where we're breaking it into circulation and access. This is something, of course, that it starts with analysis of how do people arrive, what is their experience, how do you move through the park, and there are some issues there. Like we got to think about that. But there are also some amazing moments, like that wonderful historic gate. We also look at lagoons, the lakes, and the water systems for all the reasons that Michael just spoke about in terms of resilience and dealing with water, but it's also was originally such an important part of what the core experience of this park was. And I just spent the day in the Tulane archives looking at Weedhorn's plans, just looking at the struggle to put the public in this experience of the lagoons. And it's really fascinating. And we need to follow that through. Again, a lot of these lagoons are kind of a little just scenic backdrops and not part of the everyday, and it could be more. Landscape types is a really important part. It's not just about what we do in these landscapes, but the whole endeavor of managing this, everything that Kara and her institution has to manage. How do we balance the maintenance efforts, the ecological contribution, the use, and it's an incredibly important balancing act to assess. And again, I don't think this park in holistically has been assessed in this way maybe ever. Then, of course, the thing that people think about first and foremost when we say we're doing a park master plan is what are the new things, the destinations? Well, we have a lot of great destinations, and we certainly want to think about how they evolve and progress in the developments of the park. But we're also not just looking at this from an analytic perspective. That's where we start. We're going to start looking about what are some precedents, some test fits about new ideas within these same 4 layers. Why isn't there a more robust bike pathway trail network that really ties everything together? Like, we want to ask that question. Yeah. Why? Yeah, check one. The lagoons and the lakes, again, I said the kind of scenic backdrop, and especially north of 610, bring that back into the center of your park experience. The landscape types, there's so much to unpack there, a lot of challenges, a lot of, we have to deal with changing climates, water, and the very, very old trees and landscapes and traditions here, and we have to carefully think about the management of all that. But it can also be super exciting to add something new into the mix and actually more resilient. And then, of course, on destinations, the wow factor that Kara mentioned. We're really excited about talking about that with you, and what would be the biggest wow from your perspective. So we think about these categories kind of like a layer cake. As you can see, this diagram, everyone wants to look at his first impression is like a park is the frosting, the thing on top, the candles or whatnot. But we need to we're using this as a structure. Uh-oh, we have a, there we go. So we're going to start at the bottom layers and build up. So we're going to start with this conversation with you all on the deeply structural parts of this park. The circulation, how we arrive, who arrives, where do we park, all those kind of topics. Then we're going to build up to the water systems. Then those are really the big engines of what this park intrinsically is. And then on top of that, we build the landscape types and destinations and programming, and traditions of how people use this. All of that we're going to drape over the structure. And the way that this works is, of course, they inform one another. We're not trying to isolate this and make, divide and conquer here. We're just trying to understand how they work together, and you understand that better by looking at each of these separately. For instance, Storyland is an amazing little amusement park, but it's amazing because it's in the middle of an oak forest, right? I mean, it's not just a suburban destination. Similarly, the sculpture garden is amazing because of the way it engages the water. I mean, how amazing is it that you walk on a bridge that's below water level, right? So we're going to take these 4 layers. You can see today's kickoff meeting, and we're going to talk about all 4 of these layers every time we meet, but we're going to also create a focus. So we'll first start it with that layer cake of circulation, access, how do we get here, but be cultivating input from you all and from the data and research that we're doing to build more and more a cumulative story about what the best version of City Park could be for the future. So to enable this, we've built a 6.5-foot by 22-foot model that's sitting in our office now, and it's hugely helpful for having these conversations. Firstly, a plan on a slide. It's for 1,300 acres. It's really hard to have any meaningful conversation. So this will change the nature of that conversation. We can have lots of different kinds of conversations when we're all around a model. We've also been getting just buckets and buckets of information, and it comes from all manner of places, and we're synthesizing that. That's a big part of what Kara was saying about what we've been doing since July, is just drinking from the fire hydrant and starting to break it down so that we can present that back to you in a more reasonable manner. And then just from yesterday, our robust sub-consultant team is here with us all week, or here for the whole week, just exploring, and this was just a great photograph of our team Limnotech, the hydrologist, going into those deep corners of the lagoons and really understanding what's going on there, which might be described as primordial soup. So I know we're just roughing out this process of how we're going to engage you in this conversation, but put December 6th on your calendar, because this is where it's going to really start. We're going to show circulation and how that ripples through this layer cake. And so with that, I'm going to invite Paloma, hopefully, to speak about the other part of the how, which is the public engagement.
And one thing to note, in December, we're bringing the big model. So that would be something to look forward to. Can you hear me? Okay. Oh, okay, there you go. So one thing to note for December is we're bringing that big model. So something, if you're curious about it, definitely put that date in your calendar. Before I keep going, can we just take a moment, everybody that has a question, go like this and pass them on to, yeah, thank you. Okay. Wonderful, thank you. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the public engagement part of this process, and for the next, it's going to be a little bit over a year, we'll be seeing a lot of each other. We're going to be working together a lot. So these are some groups that will be participating in this master plan, and up there, it's all of you, the community. And all of these groups are going to be giving feedback to us. That started a month ago with the survey and continues today and will continue throughout the entire process. And our job is to take all that feedback and incorporate it into the master planning process. Then we're going to come back to you with design ideas that you will see and absorb as questions, and then you're going to give feedback back to us. And we're going to do this a couple of times, at least 6 times during those meetings. And there might be other ways that we're gathering feedback from you. But at the end, all of that back and forth is going to result in the City Park Master Plan that we are issuing in December 2024. So a couple of methods that will be gathering feedback, surveys. For all of you that already took the survey, thank you. For those who haven't, please go and take it. We want to hear from you. We'll have interactive boards. We'll bring the model next meeting. And we'll also be doing focus groups that will focus on very specific topics. We are partnering with locals, the Hawthorne Agency at 1718 to do this public engagement process. They all welcome you as you came into this room. They just picked up your questions. And so they will be also helping us with this, getting all your feedback, processing it, and recording it. A very important resource for the next 18 months is the CPC Master Plan website page. This is where you will be able to find all the latest and greatest information, like this recording of the meeting, presentations, responses to all the questions that we'll get today, etc. So when in doubt, go to this website and you'll get the latest information. Well, now we're going to talk a little bit about what Kara mentioned, that we know that you've been here before and you have provided feedback in the past for Wisner and for also the the citywide park survey. So we, like Kara, we went through all the responses that were submitted during that process. And we have created some word clouds. So what you see here, the bigger the word, the most popular or the more times it was mentioned. So we learned how you all use the park today. Festivals and special events are a big thing, we understand that. And we also got an insight into what aspirations everybody has for, in this case, Wisner Track. And one key thing that was very, very apparent is nature. As Kara said, and as Michael, Paul, and Gulliver also said, nature is important to keep in a park because that allows people to escape the city. And with that, we're also able to embed resiliency in the park. So all of these are things you all said you wanted, we're listening. As well as visitor support services. So things that when you're here, and if you need a bathroom, if you want to stay for longer, for a day, you need to be able to eat, go to the bathroom, find some shade. So all of those visitor supporting services. Now, we heard that from the previous survey, and now we launch a new survey, which we're seeking to gather feedback in a different way. Before you saw there were questions and you had responses in text, in words. And what we use this time is images. We want to start working with you on thinking bold for City Park. And a way of doing that is showing you things that don't exist yet, but that we can work together on bringing here. So we gave you 6 categories to choose from to give us feedback. You could also provide feedback for the 6 of them if you were very ambitious. We've gotten more than 4,000 responses, 4,100 as of like an hour I checked. So very well received. And this is, if you haven't taken it, this is what we're doing. So you can give us thumbs up, thumbs down, or double thumbs up, and also tell us what you like or dislike about an image. And all the comments that we're getting, we're reading. So we know some people haven't liked some of the ground that you see in some playgrounds, or people are looking for shade or worried that some play equipment might get too hot, or really like the fact that you can be embedded in nature. So we're listening, and please keep your feedback coming. I'm going to click through. These are 6 really quick collages. So these are the images from the survey. The bigger the image is, the most liked. The smaller is the least liked. And you will see a pattern. All the images that are natural and that have green are always big. So we're excited to be working with you all on that. So nature activities, this was the most popular category in the entire survey to date. Play, so water, we know that it gets really hot, so providing splash pads and then places with shade. Action sports, something for teens. Athletics, we know there's already a very robust network of athletics, but we want to hear also what is missing or how can we make some of those fields have multiple functions. Event and gathering spaces, so as Michael was noting, activating the park at night, making it safe. And gardens and green spaces, we know there's a love for the flower fields that are outside of the administration building, but there's not really a way to walk through them and enjoy them, so something to look forward to. And just some key findings of all the responses that we've gotten to date. So, as we've said like 50 million times in this presentation, nature, so keeping that in the park, building resiliency and sustainability, improving connectivity and creating safe circulation, especially for pedestrians and bikers, creating safety and that will allow night use, creating places for all ages and abilities. There's a lot of comments about how meaningful City Park has been for people that have grown coming here and a desire to be able to continue doing that as they have grandchildren, and we're hearing that and we'll work on that. Visitor support services, again, so very similar outcomes than the Wisner track survey. And lastly, something that is authentic to New Orleans, something that is unique and that is appropriate for the city and the community. We'll be keeping the survey open until October. And as Gulliver said, we'll be back in December to share some design ideas. But in the meantime, that will be our way of having a line of communication with all of you. So any thoughts, any questions, any comments that you have, we're listening. And today, we will be doing Q&A shortly with the questions that we received in the cards. Then you will be able to have one-on-one conversations with the project team members. They're wearing green, and actually, if all the project team members can take a second and stand up. So there's plenty of us, and thank you everybody for coming today and making their way. And lastly, if you know that you didn't have a question today, but you might leave and think about something at the end afterwards, we have some comment postcards that you can take home, write down the question, and throw it in the mail for us. And Casey and her team will get that, and we will process those. Okay, with that, Casey, I don't know if we're ready for the questions. And 2 more things to point out. There's the email address, so if you also want to send an email, you can do that, and phone number as well if you just want to call in and talk with someone about your comment. Okay, just give us 1 second. We're processing the questions.
All right, our first question is, how will the plan
encourage active transportation. I also should have brought my reading glasses. I didn't think about this part. Hold on.
I can read. Let me see the question. How will the plan encourage active transportation, biking and walking and running?
How will it encourage active?
The plan encourage active transportation, biking.
Super, question. I can take a shot, but you're the designer. Oh, you're like, all right. I do know that we know that big parks like this can really change outcomes in communities, especially health outcomes. I personally found it kind of interesting to come into this huge park and to not see this really interconnected trail system, right? Where you could do 3 miles, 5 miles, right? And then to see more bike paths and to see kind of a little more connection. I've always personally felt it was a gap, and I think even from a inner park transportation, it's a huge park, right? And we have to create ways to experience it all. Otherwise, why do we have this jewel if you can't figure out how to get there and you can't figure out how to use it? I find it hard to imagine this is an integral component of the plan. Would you all like to speak to that?
Yeah, no, I'm glad that's the first question because that is squarely in our sights. Step one is absolutely, like this is something that what makes great parks great is the ability to have choices, where to walk and to meander and find yourself and feel safe and feel like you understand that you can lose yourself a little bit, but then find your way back to, it's wayfinding super important. It's very incoherent now. Everything in the north, you have to leave the park to then come back in, pretty much. And I think squarely in our sights is starting, how do we get past 610 and open up the gates to a holistic sense of the park. So I hope that gives you confidence that whoever asked that question, that's like front and center.
All right. There's a lot of Wisner Track questions and comments. So I think theme is don't touch it, leave it as it is. So to pull the best question, the wild trails on Harrison offer a full nature immersion. Will you keep the Wisner Track in Couturier Forest as is, but maintain the trails better?
Yeah. Don't mess it up.
I think don't mess with us integral, but what if you had a bathroom and what if you had a night? All right, everybody. All right. I mean, we hear you loud and clear. We also know maybe people want to know how far they're walking, right? That we could. All right. Well, I tell you what, Wisner. Hey. I tell you, on the design team, we have a number of locals on our design team, and actually the leader for the Conservancy is a New Orleanian, Randy Odenay. Right. I tell you what we're not going to do. I will say this. We're not going to take yelling and have this distract. So we have made sure to give you a method to get input. And we are absolutely committed to taking in all input. But we are here to have like a good meeting. This is a fantastic moment, right, to all be together. We started the meeting by saying we know how important Wisner is to so many people, and we know that a lot of you came and really put some heart and soul, right, into saying these values that kind of hadn't been expressed before at City Park. City Park, like so many other parks, pursued some commercialization, and you saw a lot of that after Katrina, this kind of like, how do we keep the lights on? So maybe we need to build some fences and charge some tickets. So we're not gonna, all right. So that was just what I was saying. We saw that, and then we saw this huge swell from the community to say that we think City Park can do something different, that it can really be this nature-based, this passive park. Not that we don't have wonderful amenities, right, in the south side of the park. They're really popular. The entire design team has been committed throughout their professional career, and certainly here today, and they were chosen for these shared values.
Okay, I'm going to give you another one. This is an extremely white crowd in a historic black city. We know that parks are not as simple as you make them out to be. So where are these communities in this meeting? How will you address these concerns in the plan in a meaningful way?
That is such a good question, because I was actually up there looking and thinking that. And there was actually one slide that was earlier that showed a swimming pool, and then the slide adjacent to it was a field. The story that was missing there is that swimming pool used to exist in City Park, but it was segregated. And when we integrated the park, instead of really, truly opening the park, we just concreted it over. And there are stories like that here in City Park. I mean, City Park had to be desegregated by the Supreme Court. Right? Not enough people know this story. And we, and while we do, like, even our own narrative at City Park is about memories, that only applies to certain people, right? There's plenty of people here tonight that didn't get to make memories here in City Park growing up. I was just observing that the crowd here does not look like New Orleans, and I am thrilled every person's here. I want to be really clear about that, but we're not going to get it right without having all these voices. And we're so lucky to have a team around us that takes this so seriously. Geneva Coleman is there in the back guiding us through. We're actually doing a zip code by zip code analysis, a neighborhood by neighborhood analysis. And when we see gaps, we are actually going right to the sources. We're going to community centers. We're going to churches. We are trying to peel this apart in every single possible way. So we've just gotten started, and we've seen gaps. I kind of was hoping maybe tonight, maybe the folks that showed up might be a little bit different from those that answer surveys. We are out to fix that gap, that knowledge gap, because we're here to make a park for everybody in our community. Do you have anything to add? Okay.
All right, this card has 7 questions, so I'm just going to pull out one, but we'll answer them, I promise. Overall health of waterways in City Park and balancing that with educational opportunities on living sustainably in New Orleans with water. Will native green species be emphasized to support the ecosystem? Will your plans include permeable paving systems? So really thinking holistically, our waterways and educational opportunities throughout the city.
Sure, it's a great question, and it is embedded into every project we do. Thinking of a system as just a system and not taking the opportunity to make it an ecological initiative, an educational aspect, is a total missed opportunity. So yes, the main goal with us fixing water quality, looking at the edges of the lagoons, opening up more for people to have visual access, creating spots that are different and not all the same, creating moments maybe where people can get kayaks in the water versus others that are meant to be natural and beauty for nature. All of these components need to be looked at, and it's an overlay of not only stormwater, but with our local, with Dan here who's in the front. So when whoever has that question, Dan is the expert at this, but understanding how all those systems work, and then with our design hydrologists really looking at how we make that water flow so those systems are actually healthy long-term and become the new experience that people have as they're moving along the water, which will in itself just, I think, push up the educational and ecological value of that.
Could I add to that? One of the things about parks is often maintenance is considered something that's kind of invisible, like out of the way of the parks experience. But actually what's happening more and more in parks is that we're showing how these landscapes are actually managed and maintained, and you can actually bring in lots of education programs in that process. It doesn't have to become this, isolated, invisible force that makes the park, accessible and available to you. You start to understand how it works. And so that's a great social route to building programs and actually getting people really interested and educated in how a landscape functions. So I think there's a lot of opportunity for that, and there's 1,300 acres consumes resources, but also produces a lot of stuff and that's something we're just starting to learn. We don't know we're like rethinking about how that cycle of material works in this, and I think it's a really exciting prospect for what's next.
Great. This one's a little on the same theme, but kind of outside of water and education. Do you envision nature plants in natural areas as a section or sections of the park, or will nature plants be interpreted into the entire landscape?
So the one component that we have seen that would help is the moment of landscape tying this all together. I don't think it's another thing. We have a lot of things. I think the landscape will be the armature, the framework that pulls all that together. So there will be moments in there that are maybe gardens or water bodies like we were talking about. But one of the pieces we've talked about from the beginning is an overall armature that holds the park together.
Great. And this is our last question, and then we'll do breakouts. Outside of our Black community or people of color, I think this is also another question theme that we had of just inclusivity and how we're engaging the community. This one's specifically around youth, but I think to talk to seniors and just a different breadth of individuals coming. But how are you including the youth voice in the master plan? Are youth leaders actively engaged in this process?
So right now, well, certainly we're trying to get our survey out, by the way, and one of the lowest categories of representation is under 25, so over 75 and under 25. So I hope that all of you that are here, whether you're a parent, a grandparent, aunt, uncle, that you'll talk to teachers, right? You'll talk to church groups. We really want to get that voice in early on. It's a great moment of kind of civic engagement to experience with youth, but we can't make the right park without that voice. I think we do anticipate focus groups coming up with kind of youth leaders. We haven't identified exactly what that looks like. We probably want to get a little bit further along in the process before we do that. But I think you heard a lot from Michael on passion for giving our kids something to do and giving them a way to maybe connect with nature in a way that in many ways has kind of turned into something for the privileged, right? To go fishing or camping, right? We hope that kids can fish, right here in the park. We hope that they can ramble and maybe have a lot of unprogrammed play, and maybe some really cool things also. There's so many things to do in New Orleans, and then sometimes just not enough at all for our kids. So we hope to solve that problem, and we do anticipate, though, to get to the heart of the question, having some structured guidance from youth leaders. All right, for everybody, we are so thankful that you came out tonight. Again, this will be, you'll be able to visit the video online. We're all just going to kind of break out and mingle. Please just come up and find us and ask us questions. We're going to be here for about 20 minutes. We got a little bit of a late start. We were closing down at 7, but we're going to stay on just a little bit longer, okay? Thanks a lot, everybody.